Alaska Corla. Minister, could you clarify what procedures are in place to ensure that the US military aircraft landing in Shannon are complying with the conditions set out in relation to permission to land, given previous responses from yourself and the Department that these conditions are rigorously enforced, that there are robust procedures in place, and that the conditions include that the aircraft must be unarmed, carry no arms, ammunition or explosives, and not engage in intelligence gathering, and that the flights concerned do not form part of a military exercise or operation? Can you please clarify how and what procedures are in place to ensure that?
That's John Corla. The Air Navigation Foreign Military Aircraft Order 1952, made under the Air Navigation and Transport Act 1946, gives the Minister for Foreign Affairs primary responsibility for the regulation of activity by foreign military aircraft in Ireland. Indeed, successive governments have made landing facilities available at Shannon Airport to the United States for well over a period of 50 years now. These arrangements are governed by strict conditions, including that the aircraft must be unarmed, carry no arms, ammunition or explosives, that they do not engage in intelligence gathering, and that the flights concerned do not form part of military exercises or military operations. These conditions apply equally to military aircraft from all countries seeking to land at Shannon. The US, as with other states, is required to provide my department with confirmation in writing that the aircraft proposing to land in Shannon complies with these strict conditions as set out and as I have mentioned. Thorough and robust procedures are in place in my department, with a view towards ensuring that the conditions for securing a permission for foreign military aircraft to overfly or land in the state are clearly understood and properly applied now and into the future. Indeed, these procedures are kept under ongoing review. Comprehensive records on requests received and decisions made are retained for the purposes of monitoring and oversight, and are drawn on as needed to provide information to this House as appropriate.
You're telling us that you're relying on assurances given, and you're given a history in relation to the legislation and the orders. And my question is, please specify the robust procedures that are in place to ensure that the conditions are met. And telling me that a letter of request and a reply is the same as a robust procedure is simply not acceptable. We are now complicit as a neutral country in wars in Syria, Yemen, Iraq and so on. The death rate is absolutely appalling. If we look at Yemen alone, where a military raid was ordered by President Trump over dinner, 23 civilians were killed in this raid, 10 children aged 12 and under, an 80-year-old man and several women. That was called a win by President Trump, although his senior officials have since confirmed that it was a mistake and it was wrong. In the Yemen, 19 of the total 28 million population are in need of humanitarian aid, and one child under 5 dies every 10 minutes from preventable diseases. We are absolutely complicit in this war and in this slaughter. And I'm asking you again a very simple question. And if your answer is we're relying on the assurances, I'll take that, but please spell it out for me.
1 minute.
Well, I reject Nascion Corla what Deputy Connolly has said in relation to our military neutrality. Indeed, the practical implementation of the conditions for granting permission for landings is guided by and reflects Ireland's traditional policy of military neutrality, to which the Government remains fully committed. The Statement of Foreign Policy entitled A Global Island, approved by the Government in January 2015, clearly states that our policy of military neutrality remains a core element of Irish foreign policy. This policy goes hand in hand with our belief that international engagement is critical to enhance cooperation and to reduce conflict in the world. Can I assure the House and Deputy Connolly that prior permission is required for all foreign military aircraft to land at Irish airports, and permission, if granted, is subject to strict conditions. In accordance with international practice, foreign military aircraft which are granted permission to land in Ireland are not subject to inspection. Sovereign immunity, a long-standing principle of customary international law, means that a state may not exercise its jurisdiction in respect of another state and its property, including state or military aircraft. This principle applies automatically to foreign state or military aircraft in the same way as it applies to Irish state or military aircraft abroad. This isn't a specific issue in relation to the United States. This is in relation to all foreign military aircraft landing at Irish airports.
Final and supplementary from Deputy
Minister, it is specifically in relation to America because international law has gone out the window with the election of President Trump. Prior to that, there were also the most serious breaches, also under the previous regime. And you're telling me that you're relying on reassurances. The government, and I think in various court cases it has been raised the lack of evidence, and they've been told to go and collect evidence. Those very brave people who protest on a regular basis, and actually the word protest is wrong, they highlight, they raise awareness in relation to what's happening down in Shannon. And over 3 million American troops have gone through Shannon based on your reassurance from them that they're carrying no arms. They're going through Shannon to refuel, to wage war. In the countries are so innumerable at this point, and the loss of life is appalling. We have a duty to live up to our neutrality, and you're simply not doing that, Minister, and neither is the government.
Final response, Minister.
Well, I don't accept that last Cancora, and can I say again, in considering requests for landings by foreign military aircraft, my department's focus is on ensuring that the information provided with regard to flights and aircraft demonstrate that they comply with the conditions as applicable. Matters such as the times at which landings take place are operational ones for the pilot or pilots in consultation with the airport in question, do not affect the decision on whether or not the aircraft meets the strictest conditions which my departments lay down. Officials of my department are available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, to process any request received and indeed to maintain ongoing contact with embassies, particularly from those whom, by reason of geography, we received the most applications, which to assure the House again that Ireland's traditional and long-standing policy of military neutrality, which I'm pleased is the stated policy of all parties in the House, is in no way adversely affected or threatened, and the practical implementation of the conditions reflects Ireland's traditional policy of military neutrality, and the government firmly remains committed to that policy.
Before we move on.